All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling folk music.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, should be a fun one.
Definitely. I think a lot of people, when they think of folk music, they've got a very specific image in their mind. But
Yeah.
there's so much more to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
so much more than just banjos and people in overalls.
Right, exact.
There's so much history there. Like we're going to be talking about the evolution of folk music, how it shaped culture, and even get into some surprising connections to other genres that you might not expect, and some stuff that's still happening today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those genres. It's like it's almost like a living history. It's
Yeah.
constantly evolving and changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those core elements are like always there.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into all of that. So first off, let's just talk about like where does folk music even come from? Like where did it all begin?
Well, I mean, you can trace it back like really far. Like scholars, I was reading some stuff about this. They believe that some of the earliest forms of folk music
Oh wow.
involved like ritualistic chanting and drumming.
Oh wow.
Like we're talking like ancient caves and stuff.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. And it's more than just music, right? It's really a way to like look into how these early societies communicated, how they like connected with each other.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about, you know, how central music was to those communities. It's almost like a primal form of communication, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But when we think about folk music, like what usually comes to mind, I think, is Europe, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like those ballads that have been passed down through generations,
Yeah,
full of stories of love, loss, heroism.
exactly. And that oral tradition is like so key to folk music. But what's really interesting is how those European folk traditions they kind of mixed with other traditions, especially here in the U.S.
Yeah, I was reading about that. It's like it's not just a simple transfer. It's like
Right.
a real melting pot of
It's
influence.
no cod, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you've got Appalachian folk music, right? With those really haunting melodies,
Oh yeah.
born in the heart of the mountains, and then you've got Native American music with its really rhythmic storytelling.
Yes.
And
Definitely.
it's all tied to the land, right?
Yeah. And those influences, they created something entirely new, a uniquely American sound.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting how folk music is shaped by the journeys that people take and the cultures that they encounter.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about like what makes folk music folk music? Like what are the key elements?
That's a great question. And it's more than just, acoustic guitars and banjos, although those are like very common. But at its core, folk music is really about storytelling. And using simple melodies to convey those stories.
Yeah, I was noticing that as I was listening to some of this stuff. It's really all about the lyrics.
It is, yeah. It's about, everyday life, struggles, celebrations, love, loss, those kind of universal themes that everyone can relate to. And there's a rawness and an honesty there that really resonates.
Yeah, it's like that power of a shared experience.
Exact.
Like it reminds me of like, when you're sitting around a campfire and someone's telling a really good story.
Yes,
Everyone's just captivated
totally.
because it's authentic.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I found really interesting was how this authenticity was preserved. Like in the 19th century, you had all these folklorists
Right.
who realized how important these oral traditions were, and they
Yes.
started to document all of these songs that had been passed down for generations.
Yeah, they were like creating a musical time capsule,
Yeah.
preserving these stories. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's remarkable how they saw the value in these songs even before, recording technology was really widespread.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, of course, in the 20th century, things really started to shift
Oh yeah, big time.
with the folk revival of the 1960s.
Yeah, yeah.
Like figures like Bob Dylan,
Of course.
Joan Baez,
Yeah,
Woody Guthrie, they took folk music mainstream.
they did.
But they also used it as a platform for social change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're singing about civil rights, protesting wars,
Yeah.
giving a voice to the marginalized.
It was a powerful time.
Yeah, and one of the sources I was reading actually drew a really interesting parallel
Yeah.
between
Oh yeah.
the social commentary in Dylan's music
Yeah.
and the storytelling tradition in hip hop.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it kind of made me realize like folk music's influence goes way beyond what we traditionally think of as folk music, you know?
That's so true. You can find its, like, DNA in all sorts of unexpected places, you know?
Yeah. Like, think about the Byrds.
Oh, yeah,
They infused rock music with folk sensibilities.
for sure.
Or Simon and Garfunkel, whose music is just so timeless and beautiful.
Yes.
And it echoes those, like, heartfelt folk melodies.
Definitely. And even in, like, more modern music, like, Macklemore's Same Love,
Oh, yeah.
you can see those elements of storytelling and social commentary.
Yeah, it's a reminder that musical genres, they don't just exist in isolation, you know?
Right.
They're constantly influencing each other and evolving.
Absolutely.
Um, so let's talk about the sound of folk music,
Yeah.
like
Well,
what makes it so captivating? It's more than just the stories,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. The instruments themselves are like a huge part of the folk music experience. You've got the acoustic guitar, the banjo, the fiddle, the harmonica, the mandolin.
Right, yeah.
And these instruments, they have like a simplicity that really allows the raw emotion of the lyrics and the melodies to shine through.
Yeah, it's unfiltered, right?
It is, yeah. It's just the pure essence of the music and the
Yeah.
story it's telling.
And then the vocals too, right?
Yeah, vocals are crucial. Folk singers, they don't necessarily need to have like super complex techniques. It's really about conveying the heart of the song, you know?
Yeah, it's about connecting with the listener
Exactly.
on an emotional level.
Yeah.
One of the things that really struck me was how folk music has been such a driving force in social movements.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, it's not just entertainment.
No.
It's about giving a voice to people who haven't been heard
Yeah.
and inspiring change.
Yeah, it's been like intertwined with labor rights movements, civil rights struggles, environmental activism.
Yeah.
Think about like the power of protest songs, you know?
Yeah, and bringing people together
Totally.
to fight for a better world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of bringing people together, you have all these large-scale folk festivals,
Oh yeah, the festivals are amazing.
like the Newport Folk Festival,
Yeah.
the Cambridge Folk Festival. They really embody that community spirit, don't they?
They do, yeah. It's like it's a celebration of the genre, you know,
Yeah.
showcasing both traditional and contemporary artists, and it's about keeping the spirit of folk music alive.
Yeah, keeping it alive and evolving, right?
Exactly. It's a living thing. Speaking of evolving, where do you see folk music going in the future?
Well, I was reading about all these artists who are blending folk with like electronic music
Oh,
or incorporating elements of like spoken word poetry.
yeah.
And it's exciting to see how the genre is constantly reinventing itself,
Yeah.
and I think the key is finding that balance,
Right.
between preserving the traditional sounds and stories
Yeah.
and embracing new voices
Yeah.
and new perspectives.
That's a really good point. And with like the world becoming so interconnected, I'm excited to see how like global folk music sharing and collaboration will shape the future.
Yeah.
Like imagine like all these amazing fusions and cross-cultural exchanges that are yet to come. It's a very exciting time, I think.
Yeah, it is. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into folk music. It's
Yeah.
been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
From ancient rituals to modern festivals,
Yeah.
and it's just incredible how folk music continues to connect us through these shared human experiences.
Absolutely.
So as we sign off here, I want to leave you with a question. What is it about folk music, even today, that makes it so resonant for you?
That's a good question.
What speaks to you? Keep exploring, keep listening, and maybe even pick up an instrument and start telling your own story. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.